Hello Magic fans, I'm Beef and welcome back to the channel, and today we are doing something a bit different, no gameplay, but we're going to be having a look at the new Final Fantasy set which comes out tomorrow on Tuesday the 10th of June. Going to give some of my thoughts around Final Fantasy being the first, I say first, Universes Beyond set legal in standard, because it's kind of not, and then my thoughts on the deck itself. And then, as a huge Final Fantasy fan, what cards I'm looking to play with in both Standard and Brawl, and maybe some other formats as well. So I've said it in a few other videos, and I've just done that, you know, Final Fantasy is the first Universes Beyond format that has been, that will be legal in Standard. Now, I don't think that's entirely true. A few years ago, we had Adventures in the Forgotten Realm, and while I think the reasoning is that Wizards of the Coast own both D&D and Magic, obviously, and there is some crossover. Ravnica, there has been a D&D book in Ravnica and in Theros, and I'm sure there's some other ones I've missed. So you could argue it's not really Universes Beyond, but it kind of is. You know, they're just saying, oh, you know, D&D worlds are just other planes in Magic. I don't think really flies, and they've made some characters from D&D into Planeswalkers, where they're not Planeswalkers in D&D, like Minsk and Mordenkainen and stuff like that. But they get around it that way. But if you go back to the very beginning of Magic in Arabian Nights, which I think was the first ever expansion to Magic, that is based on the old Arabic book of 1001 Nights, an Arabian Tale. And that's where you had cards like Shahrazad and Bazaar of Baghdad and things like that. So that is the original Universes Beyond, really, based on real-life fiction. So it's not really the first time we've seen Universes Beyond in Standard, or universes outside of Magic in Magic in Standard. But it has got some people riled up. And I think a lot of that is down to one card in particular. And we'll just go into the set there, because even though the set doesn't come out till tomorrow, they have, I think for the last set in Tarkia Dragonstorm, they put the cards on early so you could search for them. So if we type in S for set and then Fin is a 3-letter code, Final Fantasy, at the moment it just shows the cards I own. And this is also an interesting point I'll carry on later. I think this is probably the set that has one of the least amount of reprints. We've only had 2 in the main set. Herald's Horn's been printed. I don't know what that, if that's a commander set. But Syncopate and Dark Confident and apparently a Waste are the only reprints. But if we just go to Not Collected, we can see all the Final Fantasy cards. Unfortunately, at the moment, it doesn't let us put them into a deck, so we can't build any decks until tomorrow, but at least we can see the cards. So, I think the card that is, Instant Fine Enough throws up a lot of cards, is Instant Ramen. I don't quite, I suppose Ramen is in Sacrament, yeah. So Instant Ramen is a card from Final Fantasy 15. Just an FYI, if you hover over any of the cards in Arena, it'll come up the flavor text and it'll tell you what game the card's from. So here's Final Fantasy 15, because on Arena it generally doesn't put the flavor text on the cards themselves. Yeah, so there is a card now in Magic called Instant Ramen. There's a food, it has flash, draws you a card, and like all foods, you can sack it again through life. And this was controversial with Final Fantasy 15 itself, because Final Fantasy 15 had a sponsorship with a ramen company, so there you could go and buy instant ramen for this real life ramen company, and it didn't quite fit, and a lot of people took umbrage to that, and it didn't really bother me, but yeah, it kind of seemed out of place. But food was a huge part of Final Fantasy, catching fish, cooking up new dishes that gave you buffs. Sorry, a huge part of Final Fantasy 15, other games not so much. So I think that's why people are a bit iffy about it. But it's not like SpongeBob SquarePants is in Standard, or, you know, Doctor Who, or, you know, Warhammer, although Warhammer in Standard would have been amazing. At least Final Fantasy generally fits the theme of Magic of mostly high fantasy with some technology in there. Obviously, Magic's got a lot of technology, and so has Final Fantasy. It's that kind of not quite steampunk, not quite cyberpunk, not quite biopunk, but a kind of a mix of everything. Especially as you go through the series, the earlier games were a lot more high fantasy, whereas like Final Fantasy VII with Midgar, it's got trains and flying ships and all that kind of stuff. Or you did have flying ships in earlier games as well. So I think that's a lot of the issue that people have with Final Fantasy being in standard. It's not something that really bothers me. It's more about the gameplay and the cards, and I think they're really interesting. One thing I will say, being a huge Final Fantasy fan, I'm always wary of things like this because there is the risk of they done my boy dirty. I remember back when Adventures in the Forgotten Realm came out, and while I'm not a massive D&D fan, I do like D&D, and they released Drizzt Do'Urden, which I think to me and a lot of people is one of the most well-known and iconic D&D characters, and he was just a kind of bulk rare, wasn't that impressive. 5 mana, 3/3 double strike, creates a 4/1, but you didn't see much play, just wasn't that impressive. And you're like, he is the most iconic Final Fantasy D&D character, so they could have done a bit more of him, and I think there's always the risk that happens. We do have incredibly powerful cards in here, especially the couple of Sephiroths, especially one Sephiroth. There are basically a lot of the main characters. There's 2 of, so there's 2 Clouds, there's 2 Sephiroths, and I think that might be it. So if we look at Sephiroth, yes, we've got Sephiroth's Fabled Soldier. That's a really powerful one. People have been playing that in the early access, and then Sephiroth Panic Air, which I think is probably more a Brawl card. 6 mana, 4/4 Vigilance. When it enters, creatures our opponent controls get -2/-2, and when a creature our opponent controls dies, we put +1/+1 counter on Sephiroth. So we get that down in Brawl. Take out a lot of our opponent's board and grow a huge creature. Sephiroth Fabled Soldier is going to be very powerful in standard. It's been very powerful in the early access event, which obviously I don't have access to yet. Hopefully, well, I say yet. Hopefully one day I'll be invited, but he has been seeing some play and he is quite powerful. 3 mana, 3/3. When it enters or attacks, we may sack another creature. If we do, draw a card. Then when another creature dies, any creature, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. If this is a full time, this ability is resolve its turn, transform Sephiroth. And it's not hard to do because it's any creature. It could be literally we attack with Sephiroth, we sack another one of our creatures, our opponent blocks, or we take out a creature, suddenly 4, and he transforms in a Sephiroth 1-winged angel, a 5/5 flyer, and you get an emblem that has that when a creature dies, target opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. So we get that no matter what. And then when Sephiroth attacks, we may sack any number of other creatures. If we do, we draw that many cards. And obviously, sacking creatures will trigger that. Opponent loses 1 life, and we gain 1 life. So, this is something that's going to be very powerful in standard. One of the cards I'm looking forward to playing that I'll get to in a minute. And interestingly, there is... I've not spelled that right at all. Is it not? Is it Massa Moon? I always forget, and I also can't spell Massa. There we go. So the Massa Moon is Sephiroth's sword, and interestingly, it is designed to link up with Sephiroth. 3 mana, 2 equipment. As long as a equipped creature is attacking, it has first strike and must be blocked if able. And it says if a creature dying causes a trigger ability of this creature or emblem you own to trigger, it triggers an additional time. So obviously it is designed for when Sephiroth's on the battlefield and we get those death triggers, even from the emblem. I think this is the first time I've ever seen it say, an emblem we own. So designed for Sephiroth, but I don't think it's going to see much play because 3 to play, 2 to equipped. Especially when Sephiroth himself is 3 mana. So you want to play Sephiroth on 3, and then you're going to have 4 mana the next turn probably. So you can't really play this and equip it and then have mana to do other stuff. Because ideally, the turn after you play Sephiroth, you want to be able to transform him. So an interesting synergy, but not something that's going to be that powerful. So just talking about say things that do my boy dirty kind of thing. I think there are some cards here which, to me as a Final Fantasy player, don't necessarily make sense, or some of them do make sense, but I'm a bit like, I think you could have gone a bit of way. And one of those actually is right here, Koal. I've never been able to pronounce it. 2 mana, 2/2. You can pay 2 to tap it to tap target non-enchantment creature. 1, I don't know why the non-enchantment thing's on there. So for those who don't know, in Final Fantasy, Koals are cat-like creatures. Interestingly, Final Fantasy didn't create them. They're from a a sci-fi story from another author before, but they have an ability called Blaster, which, yes, in some games paralyzes the opponent, which is why obviously it has that, power cost tap it, a tap target creature as a paralyzer. But I know it's more often, but to me it's mostly an instant death thing. So I think it would have made more sense if Kyo had an ETB destroy target creature, a bit like Ravenous Chupacabra. Also need to up the cost, or maybe, I know Exhaust was an Ether Drift mechanic, but have another activated ability for someone like pay 4 or 5, tap it, destroy target non-enchantment creature or creature, do this only once, kind of thing, just to cover that kind of ability. Because to me, Kyo is known for having Blaster, and it's also interesting that a lot of these cards, like in D&D, they have flavor text for the names, like battle menu. We see attack, ability, magic, item. If we just quickly go to Squall, why can't I type today? He has this ability called Rough Divide. The name doesn't matter. So why they didn't just add on like Blaster to it, because that's what it's known for. One of the other cards that I find not odd, but Christus. So in Final Fantasy, there's always been, or for a long time, blue magic. So the idea is, for those who don't know, in Final Fantasy you have black magic, which is offensive spells like fire, blizzard, thunder or bolt or whatever. White magic is curative magic, cure, Isuna, which cures all status effects and things like that. Red magic, which is a mix of both. Red mages can generally have both, but not to a powerful level. And then blue magic, which is magic based on enemy skills. In fact, in Final Fantasy VII, it was called enemy skill. It wasn't called blue magic. And you could, learn or cast spells and abilities that your opponents cast. Now, Christus in Final Fantasy VIII, her limit break was called blue magic, and she got abilities from enemies. You had to use items to give her the abilities. And some of them are really powerful, like the ability to give yourself Protection Shell and regen all at once from Adamantoids. I can't remember what the spell was called. Name White Wind. That was it, I think. So it makes sense for her to be a blue as a blue magic, but to me, she just doesn't seem like a blue creature. But oh well. But also her blue magic of when she enters, when they cast instant or sorcery card from a graveyard, and mana of any type can be spent to cast that spell. Now, is it any graveyard and not just as? So that's where the enemy skill bit comes in. But equally, I don't know, I think it would make more sense if she had like flash, and as she came in, you could counter a spell and then copy that spell, because that would, I think, signify her learning an enemy's ability and using it against them. So maybe a bit more powerful than she is now, but I think that would just fit more with her ability, with her, more with her from the game. So there's a few things like that where you're a bit like, doesn't really make sense to me. But there's always that risk when you bring a very popular IP into something else. So yeah, just a few grumbles about some of them, but overall I think they're pretty good. One thing I'm really interested in looking forward to in this set is, this set has, I don't know the numbers, but to me, like a historically low number of reprints. As we saw, the only reprints are Syncopate, which is a pretty good counterspell that doesn't see a huge amount of play, and Dark Confidant, which is a very, very powerful card, but we already kind of have it in standard in Dark Star Augur, which does the same thing. It does cost more, 1 mana more, but it is bigger. So, it's going to be harder to judge, I think, what cards are going to have an impact in standard. Because obviously at the moment, standard, at least ranked, is mostly, is it Prowess with Kori Steelcutter and Omniscience combo decks. So, usually when you get a standard release, you go, oh, okay, we've got a number of reprints or functional reprints where we can go, okay, we know this card's going to have an effect because we've seen it before, we've played it before, we know that it's going to counter this particular ability. Whereas a set that is almost completely new, and there's not a huge amount of functional reprints, and functional reprints are essentially cards that do exactly the same as another card but have a different name. Ren's Resolve is a functional reprint of So Ren's Resolve is exile top 2 cards of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards. Whereas if we go exile the top 2 cards, Reckless Impulse, they are exactly the same. They literally have exactly the same wording, same cost. They are functional reprints of each other, and I think Ren's Resolve came after Reckless Impulse. I don't think there's even that many of those in Final Fantasy, so it will be really interesting to see how it mixes up the standard. And then, people are looking forward to Ultima. Oh, because I don't own it yet. There's more than one card called Ultima in Final Fantasy. Where is it? Oh yeah, here we go. 5 mana sweeper, destroy all artifacts and creatures, and then you end the turn, because obviously with Corey Steelcutter, Day of Judgment, Sunfall don't destroy the actual Steelcutter itself, and because you've played a sweeper, your opponent is the first one to generally rebuild their board, and because it's not particularly hard to cast 2 spells in an Izzet deck, often you just have a Corey Steelcutter monk smashing you in. So Ultima will destroy the Corey Steelcutter, but that end the turn addition just makes it so much worse. One, it's 5 mana, and often you don't get a turn 5 against Corey Steelcutter. And yes, destroying all artifacts and creatures is really good, but then could you end the turn immediately? You just don't have the ability to do anything else. If this was like an instant for 6, I think it would be better, because then you could do it on your opponent's turn. We very rarely see instant sweepers, but there was one in Outlaws of Thunder Junction with the spree mechanic, but I didn't see a huge amount of play. It did cost 6 just with a sweeper effect, and you can give a creature indestructible, and I think it calls your opponents to lose indestructibility as well. But yeah, I don't know this will actually be particularly good against Corey Steelcutter, and it's one of those things, if you don't know if they put the artifacts on there because of Corey Steelcutter, I swear, I'm sure they do things like that. So that'll be, I think, really interesting to see how standard plays out. But now let's quickly just go on to some of the cards I am looking forward to playing. So the one I'm most looking forward to playing, and this will be the first deck tomorrow night, Jumbo Cactuar. Jumbo Cactuar, 7 mana, 1/7, so that's very expensive for a crap body, but then it has an ability, 10,000 Needles. Whenever this creature attacks, it gets plus 9,999, plus 0 till end of turn. For those who don't know, Cactuars are creatures in the Final Fantasy series, they're in most of the games, that are small and weak, but incredibly evasive. It's very hard to hit them. And the regular Cactuars, that are regular Cactuars in the game, have an ability called 1,000 Needles, and they will do 1,000 damage to you. The regular Cactuar doesn't have 1,000 Needles, but it does show its evasiveness. It's 1 mana 3/3 with trample. Beginning with end step. If this creature didn't end of a battlefield return it to its owner's hand. Bit weird wording. Basically what it means, if you say it's placed on turn 1, nothing happens. On turn 2 you can attack with it, but at the beginning of your end step, because it didn't end the battlefield return to its owner's hand. So not a great card. 1 mana 3/3 that you can attack with once isn't terrible and block with potentially, but yeah, it's a bit weird. But yeah, 10,000 Needles, Jumbo Cactuar from Final Fantasy VIII. I think it's the only game that has a Jumbo Cactuar version. It is a boss and also a summon. They're called Guardian Forces in Final Fantasy VIII. You can fight him, and then you get the ability to summon him. You draw it from him, I think. But yeah, he does 10,000 Needles, which obviously in Final Fantasy, in most games, up until, well, I think in all games up until Final Fantasy X, the cap for damage and health is 9,999. So obviously, the Jumbo Cactus doing 10,000 damage to you will kill you. And how they actually does it, I think it's like meant to be 1 damage 10,000 times. Same with 1,000 Needles. But obviously hitting in for 10,000 is really, really powerful, but he has no evasion. So the decks that have been playing him in the early access event, and what I'll be playing will be, like, you could just ramp it out, hope it doesn't get removed. Some people have been playing a black-red version, which doesn't play green, so you're not going to cast him at all, but focus on Arden Usurper, an 8 mana 4/4, Demons you control have Menace, Lifelink, and Haste. Arden is the main bad guy from Final Fantasy 15, and his ability Scar Scourge. At the beginning of combat on your turn, exile up to one target creature card from the graveyard. If you exile a card this way, create a token with a copy of it, except it's a 5/5 black demon, meaning it has Menace, Lifelink, and Haste. And the idea is you get Arden and a Jumbo Cactuar into your graveyard. You reanimate the Arden with something like Zombify or the pull section of Push Pull. That comes back. Beginning of combat in your turn, you get the Jumbo Cactuar back. It now attacks in. It has Menace, Haste, and Lifelink, 9,999. And even if they can block it, it doesn't have Trample. You now have 10,000 health. You're probably not going to lose from there. And obviously, if they can't block it, you just smacked in for 10,000. The other way is you can just ramp it out, use something like Smuggler Surprise to do it. Smuggler Surprise. Basically 6 mana, put 2 creature cards from the hand on the battlefield. It's an instant, so you can do it at the end of your opponent's turn to attacking straight away. And what I might do is Smuggler Surprise, green ramp, but then play green and red for Carousel Sword, the burn together. Target creature you control deals damage equal its power to any other target, then sack it. So if we attack it, if our opponent blocks, we can just burn together and deal 10,000 damage to our opponent. So that's what I might play tomorrow, but I might have a few goes to see which one really fits. The next card we've already spoken about, so I won't go into too much detail. Sephiroth, Fabled Soldier. I think it's going to be really, really good. There is an interesting card as well, Stiltskin, which I can't. Stiltskin, Moogle Merchant, 1 mana, 1/2 of lifelink, pay 2, tap it. Target opponent controls, gains control of another target permanent we control if they do draw a card. I think this is going to fit really well into Cat Pact with Demonic Pact, which is in standard at the moment. 4 mana enchantment, beginning of upkeep, we choose one has been chosen. One of those is lose the game, so we choose the other ones and then we give it to our opponent with Stiltskin or Cat Pact. Cat Pact is Generous Offering. No, Harmless Offering. Harmless Offering, there we go. Next up, it's 2 cards. Aerith Gainsborough, 3 mana, lifelink. When we gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on Aerith. When it dies, put X +1/+1 counters on each legendary creature we control, with X the number of +1/+1 counters on Aerith Gainsborough. Coupled with Excalibur. Excalibur 2, when we gain life, put a charge counter on Excalibur. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each charge counter on it. So if you go back to Aerith, Lifelink is a very, very popular deck. I love playing Lifelink, and apparently it's the most popular deck on Arena, well, archetype. According to Wizards, Ajani's Pridemate, when you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter is the most crafted card on Arena. So that tells you something. So playing this in a life gain shell with some bats, just because the black-white bat, where are we? Zoraline, being a legendary, you could put the counters on it if Aerith dies, but then it's just something else to put into a life gain deck. Next up, we do have another couple of spells. Venat, Heart of Hydaline, 3 mana, 3/3. When we cast a legendary spell, draw a card. This period triggers once each turn. Then we can play 7 and tap it, exile target non-land permanent, and transform Venat into Hydaline, the Mother Crystal. 4/4 indestructible. Beginning of combat in your turn, put a +1/+1 count on another target creature control. To your next turn, against the indestructible, if that creature is legendary, draw a card. So legendary themed. And then the other one is Seraph from Final Fantasy 13. Seraph Aron, 3 mana, 2/2. First legendary creature spell you cast each turn costs 2 less to cast. Beginning of combat in your turn, if you control 2 or more other legendary creatures, we may transform Sarah into Crystallized Sarah, an artifact which has the same ability, and legendary creatures we control get +2/+2. So back in, I think it was Outlaws of Thunder Junction, there was a legendary deck which we played on my channel, focused around Annie Joins Up, which doubles up the triggered ability of legendary creatures. And then, really powerful legendaries like Dragonhawk. Well, Dragonhawk's from Bloomburrow, so the deck was from Bloomburrow. And then other legendary creatures. So I think Venat and Serra is really going to fit into that kind of deck. Next up is Yuna. Yuna is a very, very powerful card. And in fact, there is another Yuna I'm not seeing. I think this must be one of the commander decks. I think that's the commander symbol, which means we might not get it in the release tomorrow. We'll probably get it in the alchemy release. That's what happened with the Tarkir commanders. I'm actually just going to quickly read Una Grand Summon up because I've not seen it. 4 mana, 1/5, Grand Summon, tap it, add 1 mana of any colour. When you next cast a creature spell this turn, that creature enters with +2 with 2 additional +1/+1 counters on it. When another permanent you control is put into a graveyard from battlefield, if it had counters on it. So it's a counter deck. That's going to be very powerful. And I've also not seen this version of Tidus. I'll read that later. But anyway, Una, Hope of Spira, a 5 mana 3/5. During your turn, Una and enchantment creatures you control have trample, lifelink, and ward 2. Beginning of your end step, return up to 1 target enchantment card from your graveyard to battlefield with finality counter on it. So it's obviously an enchantment payoff, but we also have some very powerful new enchantments. So there are creature sagas now. For example, Summon Bahamut, 9 mana, 9/9 with flying. First 2 chapters draw up to 1 target non-land permanent. Chapter 3, draw 2 cards. And chapter 4, this creature deals damage equal to the total mana value of your opponents you controlled each opponent. So, other permanent, sorry. So if we have quite a big board, it basically is kill our opponent. Now, because it is a saga, obviously it can't attack turn 1 because it doesn't have haste, and it can't attack turn 4 because it's going to be dead. So essentially, for Bahamut, we attack on turn 2 and 3 of those law counters, but a 9/9 flyer. And obviously, if we can put it in a graveyard and get it back with Una, that is very, very, very powerful. There are some cards in Final Fantasy which are creatures, and then they transform into a saga creature, and then they transform back. Dion, for example, is from Final Fantasy 16. Not my favourite game. 4 mana 3/3. During your turn, Dion and other knights you control have flying. When it enters, you create a 2/2 white knight creature tokens. That's really good. You get 5 power and toughness worth of creatures across 2. Then you can pay 6, tap it, exile it, turn to battlefield transformed as Bahamut. In Final Fantasy 16, they're characters who are summoned dominance. Dion is Bahamut's dominant, so he can turn into Bahamut, and he gets those triggers, and then for the 3rd trigger, you bring it back as Dion. But obviously, with Summon Bahamut, you don't have that. The other really powerful enchantment saga creature is Knights of Round, 8 mana, 3/3. For the first 4, you create 3 2/2s, which means there are 13. Yes, Knights of the Round. I swear in Final Fantasy VII it's called Knights of the Round, not Knights of Round. Leave a comment down below if I'm just being stupid. Your opponents get smashed by 13 knights. The idea is meant to be Knights of the Round Table. And then the chapter 5 is obviously when you sacrifice the Knights of the Round. But other creatures you control get +2/+2. Turn to turn, they gain indestructible. So if you've got 13 knights and they gain +2/+2, you're attacking for 26 indestructible. So that's really, really powerful. Another card, not a legendary actually, Sabo Tender, 2 mana, 2/1 with reach, landfall. When a land you control enters, this creature deals 1 damage to each opponent. Really excited just to play this with Iridescent Vine Lasher, which has the same ability for 1 mana. Turn 1, Vine Lasher. Turn 2, Sabo Tender. Turn 3, maybe get out another Vine Lasher with Offspring, and then you're pinging your opponent a huge amount. Another 2 cards at once. Squall and Cypher. Final Fantasy VIII is my favourite Final Fantasy. Tied very, very closely with Final Fantasy X. I love Final Fantasy VII. There are, I think, a certain generation, people my generation, where Final Fantasy VII was the first Final Fantasy game we played. Sometimes I think people think it's sacrilege if you don't say Final Fantasy VII is your favourite, but I've always been a huge fan of 8 and 10. But Squall is an interesting card. 4 mana, 3/4. Rough Divide is his first limit break. I think they should have called it the ultimate limit break, which for Squall is Renzo Kuken. Whenever a creature you control attacks alone, it gains double strike at the end of turn. That's pretty good. And when Squall deals common damage to a player, return target a permanent card with mana of a 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. If he attacks alone, he'll have double strike, so you'll get that trigger twice. And obviously, being a 3/4 with potential double strike, it's very hard to block. Has no evasion, so if you have a way to give it trample or menace or whatever, it will be pretty good. But you need a stocked graveyard. And interestingly, Cypher. So in Final Fantasy VIII, Cypher is his rival. They are the only 2 people to use gunblades. So if you can see, there is a trigger on his gun, and it's an odd mechanic, because I don't think I've ever done it in another Final Fantasy, is where when you do basic attack, if you press R1 as he hits, you do a bit of extra damage because it's him firing his gun. Him and Cypher are the only character who use gunblades in the game. And in fact, gunblades were real, and I've actually held one. A friend of mine had one. His dad had one as a kid. It was a medieval weapon. It wasn't practical in real life, but they were real things. So Cypher is a red card, 4 mana, 3/4. So same stats, same casting cost, but in red. Has the same when a creature attacks alone, and the same ability, but it's instant or sorcery spell, 3 or less. So I don't think they're going to fit in the same decks. One, because they're 3 colours. We got white and black for Squall and red for Cypher, and you generally want to go all in permanence for Squall and instant sorceries for Cypher. But it is interesting how they have just mirrored the abilities for the characters who are rivals and meant to be very, very similar. And in fact, if you see on his face, he has a scar going across his nose, and Squall has a scar going the other way, because in the opening cinematics for Final Fantasy VIII, they're having a practice duel, because they're both at an academy together, and they both, I think Squall gets hit first, and then he retaliates and cuts Cypher's face up. Maybe the other way around. Another non-legendary card I'm looking forward to is Triple Triad. Triple Triad is the mini game for Final Fantasy VIII. It's a very good card game. One of those games that they could have made a full game of it, I think, and I would have bought it. But it's one of those red enchantments that's just not janky, but it's powerful, but probably too expensive to really get much play. But 8 mana. Beginning of your upkeep, each player exiles a top card of their library. Till the end of turn, you may play the card you own exiled this way, and each other card exiled this way with lesser mana value without paying their mana costs. Now, the way I read this, it means you don't have to play your card. You don't have to cast. You don't have to spend mana to cast your card. You could read it as you only have it's only your opponent's card you don't have to spend mana on, but we'll see in the game. But essentially, definitely 1 extra card, maybe for free, and then some of the times 2 extra cards, 1 or both of them for free. It's probably too slow because it doesn't do anything the turn it comes down. You've got to wait until your next upkeep and hope you survive. But it'd be an interesting one to play, and one I'm quite looking forward to. Next up is Tifa from Final Fantasy VII. Okay, there's a lot of cards with Tifa in the name apparently. Where is she? Where is she? She's 2 mana. I have an easy way to do this. Collected. No. There's Tifa Lockhart. Here we go. 2 mana, 1/2 trample. Whenever a land you control enters, double Tifa Lockhart's power to end of turn. So very similar to Mossborn Hydra. 3 mana. Enters the battlefield 1 +1/+1 counter on it, and when a land enters, you double the amount of counters on it. So if you can get Tifa down, put some counters on her, and then double up your landfall triggers with, say, Feral Passage or Rogue's Hideout, I think. There's another card which lets you sack it and get another land. You can then smash in for quite big as well. And then I think the other ones, not a specific card, but there are a lot of new birds. From Final Fantasy, especially in green. Traveling Chocobo. We can play lands and cast birds to the top of our library, and if a land or bird enters the battlefield triggers an ability, it triggers additional time. Bart's Boko has affinity with birds, so we'll reduce in the cost. And when it enters, each other bird you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature an opponent controls. Sadly, Chocobo can get quite big with those landfall triggers, especially if you then have a traveling Chocobo on the battlefield. And obviously, we have some other birds. Choco Seeker of Paradise as well. When one of our birds we control attack, look at that many cards from a library. So if we attack with 4 birds, we look at 4 cards to our library. We put 1 into a hand, then put any number of land cards on them onto the battlefield, tapped and the rest into your graveyard. And landfall, whenever a land we control enters, Choco gets +1/+0 to end of turn. Because that is, some of the birds have that when land enters, they get +1/+0. But Black Chocobo, which is the other side from side quest, Razor Chocobo, I think it should have been Golden Chocobo, the ultimate Chocobo from Final Fantasy VII. It has landfall of when a land you control enters, all birds you control get +1/+0 to end of turn. Next up again, Artifacts. Artifacts is one that is a archetype that I do like playing. Interesting, there's 2 Tidus's, but one of them's green and one of them's just blue-white. The one in Bant is from the Commander set. So Tidus Blitzball Star, only a uncommon, which he's technically on the main character of Final Fantasy X. He is the secondary main character. Technically, Yoon is the main character, but he is the one you control, so he is kind of the main character. So if only him to be an uncommon's a bit harsh, I think. Obviously, there is a mythic rare in the Commander set, but 3 mana, 2/1. Whenever artifact you control enter +1/+1 counter on Tidus, and whenever Tidus attacks, tap target creature and opponent control. So in the Simulacrum Synthesizer deck, this can get quite big. And there is a new. Oh no, not type affinity. There is a new affinity artifact, Valkyrie Aerial Unit from Final Fantasy VII. 7 mana, 5/4. Obviously, affinity artifacts flying when enters Surveil 2. So this will cost 2 mana for a lot of the time. So interesting to play that one in there as well. And finally, there is a combo that will be in standard. Lightning Army of 1. Apparently that's not what she's called. Lightning Army of 1. I don't know why I didn't find that. 3 mana, 3/2, first strike, trample, lifelink. Whenever lightning deals combat damage to a player, until your next turn, if a source would deal damage to that player or permanent that player controls, it deals double that damage instead. So because she has first strike, the idea is you attack with her and let's say one other creature. She gets him a first strike and trample, so she hits your opponent, and then your secondary creature will then deal double damage to if it's blocked or whatever. But if you attach Genji Gloves to her, Genji Gloves is also new. Genji Gloves, sorry. 5 mana, equip 3. Equipped creature has double strike, and then when equipped creature attacks, if it's the first combat phase of the turn, untap it. After this phase, there's an additional damage phase. So giving lightning double strike and then an extra combat turn. Let's say she attacks in on the blocked. She will do 3, then 6, then in the second combat, 12, then 24. So in one combat, 12, 36, 42, 45 points of damage just from basically one card. Yes, getting her out and then getting Genji Glove and equipping it out on her will take a lot to do, but still be pretty powerful. So there are cards I'm looking forward to in standard. In Brawl, there are some other cards as well. Minru White Mage, 5 mana, 3/3. Vision's Lifelink. Whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 count on each cleric you control. There's quite a few clerics in the game. There's quite a few in Final Fantasy as well, because, as I said earlier, white magic is the healing, restorative stuff, and in Magic, let's call them clerics. But that would be an interesting mono white commander. Matoya as well will be a mono blue commander. Around whenever you Squire Surveil, draw a card. That's really good because if you look at cards like Opt, why hasn't? Oh, because I have collected Opt. Opt, Scry 1, draw a card. That's basically 1 mana. Scry 1, draw 2 cards. That's really, really, really good. Then we've got Ishtola. Ishtola Rule. 6 mana, 3/5. Beginning with end step. Exile target creature you control. Then return to the battlefield under its owner's control. Then if it's the first end step of your turn, there's an additional end step after this step. So basically, this is what's I've gone Theros God Blue, the Thassa. That's her. Thassa Deep Dwelling, beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 other target creature control and return that card to battlefield under your control. So it is that on obviously a more expensive creature, but then you get 2 of them. So if you have things you want to get the ETB of again, you get it twice. That's really good. And then Kefka is probably the one I'm playing first. I might put it to a Patreon poll. Kefka Court Mage, 5 mana, 4/5 in Grixis. When Kefka enters or attacks, each player discards a card. Then you draw a card for each card type among cards discarded this way. So, for example, if we discard a land and our opponent discards a creature, we draw 2 cards. If we both discard a land, we draw 1 card. But if we discard, say, an artifact creature and an opponent discards a land, that's 3 card types. We draw 3 cards. So we're always going to be drawing 1. And in theory, I think the most you can probably draw is 4, but it's very unlikely. In Brawl, in Commander, obviously, it's more likely you draw more. And from what I think your opponent discards first. So then you can see what they discard, and then you can choose what you discard afterwards. Then you can pay 8. Each opponent sacks a permanent of their choice. We transform Kefka, only as a sorcery, into Kefka, Ruler of Ruin, 5/7 flying. Whenever an opponent loses life during your turn, you draw that many cards. So that's just bonkers. And because the way the transform works, it's not exile it and then bring it back transformed. It's transformed. So the same card, so it doesn't have summoning sickness, so you can get in for 5 flying in the air straight away. Interestingly, so we spoke about Dion quickly earlier. Dion's other side, so Dion transforms, you have to exile him and transform. So he can't attack the turn he comes back as Bahamut because you exile it and transform it. And then on the third one, when you exile Bahamut, then return it to battlefield front face up. Again, you've exiled it, return it, so it will have summoning sickness again. But for ones like Kefka, it is just you transform it so you can attack straight away. And then the final card I'm really looking forward to is Vivi. I find it really interesting that they've made Vivi like one of the most powerful cards. Vivi is the Black Mage from Final Fantasy IX. It is integral to the story, but Black Mages are a Diamond Dozen in Final Fantasy. That is kind of the point and part of the storyline of Final Fantasy IX, that there are these army of clones, these Black Mages all look the same and are all evil apart from Vivi. So that's why I think he's really powerful. But 3 mana, 0/3, you can pay 0, add X mana in any combination of blue or red, blue and or red, where X is Vivi's power. Activate only during your turn and only once each turn. And whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Vivi, and it deals 1 damage to each opponent. That deals 1 damage to each opponent is the wizard thing in Final Fantasy. So there's lots of cards which are wizards or create wizard tokens that have that ability. Fortunately, a lot of them are in black, so you can't play them in a Vivi Brawl deck, but there are enough you can play it. But just that ability of like, you play Vivi, you start playing out your ops and considers and your stock ups, but your cheap cards that refill your hand, especially if you don't have like a Matoya in your hand as well. You can Matoya in play, you can draw extra cards when you surveil. You can bump up Vivi's power, ping your opponent so you can attack with Vivi. Because you don't have to tap him to use his ability, then you can just pay 0, add 5 mana, cast your Time Warp or whatever. So really, really powerful. So I'm kind of torn between Kefka and Vivi for the first one. I might put it into a Patreon poll. So if you're interested in getting involved in that, please sign up to Patreon. Link will be down below in the video description. And finally, I think just there's a couple of clouds. Not multicolored. There we go. Cloud, Midgard Mercenary, 2 mana, 2/1. He is a soldier. I was very pleased that he is listed as a soldier because obviously in Final Fantasy he is a soldier, kind of. When he enters, search the library for an equipment card, reveal it, put it into your hand and shuffle. As long as the Cloud is equipped, if an ability of Cloud or an equipment attached to it triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. So like Pan and Monocon for equipments. And there is another Cloud, Planet Champion, which is also based on equipment. As long as your turn, as long as Cloud is equipped, as double strike indestructible. Equip abilities you activate, the target Cloud costs 2 less to activate. So obviously there are equipment payoffs and themes, and I think the other Cloud's going to work better in Brawl than Standard, because I think you have a more selection of equipment that do something when you attack or deal combat damage. There's not a huge amount. Although if you whack Genji Glove on him as well, I think you get 2 extra combat steps, so that could be quite powerful. So they're the cards I'm looking forward to playing in Brawl, and obviously Standard we've gone before. So really, really excited for the set. Please let me know down in the comments how excited you are and what cards you would like to see me play on the channel, or if there's any archetypes you would like me to have a go at. And obviously I said, if you go into collection now and do S:/Finn, it will show you all the cards from Final Fantasy. You do have to select cards you don't not collected yet, otherwise it will show you the reprints, assuming you own them. There are a lot of really, really powerful and interesting cards in there. I've not even gone over there's a cycle of crystals, 1 in each color, which reduce the cost of those colour spells by 1. They all are 4 mana, which is quite expensive, and in standard, because they don't impact the board, you're not really going to do much. But they'll be really interesting in Brawl. So have a look at the cards. The adventure lands are going to be pretty powerful as well. Let me know what you think. Let me know what ones you want to see me play, and I'll see you all in the gameplay.